stories of our history, so that we may ponder, we may reflect, we may learn from that experiences that people before us had. So we learn the positive things and try to avoid the negative things. And especially the history of Al-Andalus, it is a history that every Muslim should know about because of the relevance that it has in our time. And as you know, history keeps a bit more closer. Okay. And as I was saying, that history keeps repeating itself. In the history of Al-Andalus, we have lessons and we have moments that was for our glory and also for our humiliation. Lessons that we learned and are the reason for our happiness and also for our sadness. And if you look at the reasons of that change, you will find that always it was that the Muslims were getting better, progressing, and being role models for the humankind when they were at the highest point of Iman. And when they turned away from Islam, turned away from the teachings of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took all that away from them. So inshallah, briefly, because in 1 hour is very hard to talk about the whole history of Al-Andalus, which is approximately 800 years. Inshallah, we will focus in few personalities which made a big change in the history of Al-Andalus, and also about few places which are famous today and a lot of people come to see from all over the world. So the first person that we should learn about in the history of Al-Andalus is Musa ibn Nusayr. Musa ibn Nusayr was appointed by the Umayyads, who were the family ruling the Muslim world, as the governor for North Africa. He was given the mission to go and spread Islam on these lands. Before Musa ibn Nusayr was Uqba ibn Nafi', who reached all the way until Morocco, nowadays Morocco, because he was in Morocco on those days. And he reached to a city which is in this place called Asfi. He went on the sea, and he said, Allah, you are witness that I cannot move any further. If I knew that there were people behind the sea, I would do my best to reach to them. These people, what was their intention? The intention was to save humanity from the punishment and bring them to the path of Allah, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so they could get salvation. But Uqba ibn Nafi' was going too fast, and when he will conquer, will leave just few men and keep on moving further. And when he was returning to Damascus, to Dimashq, he got killed on his way back in a place which is the actual Aljazair, Algeria now. Then Musa ibn Nusayr took a mission, and he changed the strategy. He said that let's go slowly, and every place that we go, we settle down, we teach people about Islam, open masajid, open madaris, and so the people feel proud about this religion, and also become helpers for the mission to continue. Until he reached the area again of Morocco, where there were the people called Amazigh, different tribes that they were the original people over there, which European historians call them Berber, but they don't like to be called Berber as this word comes from barbarian, which has a negative meaning. So the Amazigh, majority of them accepted Islam, learned about Islam, and Musa bin Nusayr got them ready to cross the border and go into Spain, which was the Iberian Peninsula at that time, because the concept of Spain, as we know today, is much later, after the conquest of the Christians and the fall of Al-Andalus. And he appoints a man, which historians say that he was only between 17 to 21 years old as the commander of the army for such a great mission. And this is something that we should learn about. Many times we look at our youngsters and don't give them responsibilities. And by not doing that, we miss a lot of potential. And we also miss that potential that if we don't give them these responsibilities, they will go and that potential they have, will put it in other places, which many times will be harmful for them. So it is our responsibility as a community to empower our youngsters, which are the quwwah of Islam, the power of Islam. So Tariq his name was Tariq ibn Ziyad, from Amazigh origin. But before him, a small group of men were sent, and the commander was Tarif ibn Malik. They landed in Tarifa, which was named after him. They checked the area, decided where the Muslims were going to land and where the Muslims were going to wait for the Visigoth army. Because at that time, Spain was ruled by the Visigoths. The Visigoths are people from Germany, German descent, and the king was called Rodrigo. The local people from Spain were actually very tired of the way they used to rule. A lot of tyranny, they were oppressing the people, taking many taxes from them, taking the lands from them. So for many local people, it was a release when the Muslims came down. Anyway, Tariq ibn Ziyad, with 9,000 men, land on this mountain that you see in the picture, which is Gibraltar, and is called after the name of Tariq. When it comes from the Arabic word Jabal Tariq, which means the mountain of Tariq. Later on, they go to this place, which is called the Valley of Guadalete, next to Barbate, and they wait for the Visigoth army. The Muslims were 9,000, and when Rodrigo, the Visigoth king, hears about Muslims coming to the Iberian land, he gets all his army ready. The historians say about 100,000 men, and he goes himself because he's sure that he's going to win this battle. They come down, and the battle starts on the 28th of Ramadan. So there are many of the Muslim battles where the Muslims were victorious actually happen in Ramadan. So the battle lasts for 8 days, and at the end, Muslims win the battle. There were 3,000 shaheed from the Muslim army. There were 9,000 Muslims left, but they vanished the whole of the Visigoth army. And Rodrigo himself dies in that battle. Some say by the hands of Tariq ibn Ziyad, some say by running away and to the river that was next to it. So Tariq ibn Ziyad sees this as an opportunity, and then he keeps moving forward because there is no army, there is no leader, and he starts very easily getting one city and another city. It is so that in 2 years that Muslims conquer majority of the Iberian Peninsula, which is Spain and Portugal, besides this part in the north where the Christians stayed. After the story of Tariq ibn Ziyad and Musa ibn Nusayr, the situation in Spain was such that the army was formed from different people from different places of the world. So that you had the Arabs from Yemen, from Syria, the Amazigh, the local people who became Muslim. So a lot of conflicts started to happen because each one wanted to rule a different place in Spain, and they would not really unite. And what was happening in the other part of the world, in Damascus, was that the Abbasid movement raised, and they started attacking. They finally got to Damascus, the Abbasid movement, which the ideology was that only the people who were from the family of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ should lead the Ummah, should be the Khalifa, should be the Amir. And they went inside Damascus and killed all the Umayyad family. And there was one young lad, again a young lad whose name was Abdul Rahman. Abdul Rahman, whose father was Syrian from the Umayyad family, and his mother was from the tribes of the Amazigh. He runs away and he seeks refuge on these tribes. For 4 years he stays there, but something is telling him that he had to do something for the Ummah. And he starts looking towards Al-Andalus, knowing that the situation over there, it is not good for the Muslims, there is disunity. So he sent his servant Badr, and for 1 year he speaks to different people in Al-Andalus, and he gets ready people to accept Abdul Rahman. So Abdul Rahman goes to Al-Andalus, and with his charisma, with his ikhlas, because actually all that he done was with a lot of ikhlas, with a lot of hikmah. He comes down, and at the end he had to fight because people in Al-Andalus saw him as a danger. He came to present himself to serve Islam. They will send him to a battle in the front, so he would get killed, but he came back as victorious. And the army actually, after seeing his attitude, after seeing his bravery, they said that we want you as our leader. So he comes back to Cordoba. The leader of Cordoba, the wali from the Yemen family, goes out to fight him, but at the end Abdul Rahman is victorious, and he starts his work to start uniting Al-Andalus. And it wasn't an easy work. It wasn't an easy job for Abdul Rahman. For many years, until 786, talking when Muslims came in, was 711. A few years after, Abdul Rahman goes, until 786, he doesn't get all of Al-Andalus together under one rule. And it's in that time that after completing his mission, he decides to start building the very famous masjid of Cordoba, which is the one we see in this picture. This masjid will be like the foundation of a great empire that will stay for a lot of time in Al-Andalus, that will provide a lot of justice for the people, not talking about just Muslims, because Muslims actually were the minority. Majority of the people in Spain, in Al-Andalus, were not Muslims, but Muslims were the rulers, and they rule with justice, with tolerance, and they provide such an environment where people will progress in knowledge and many other arts and scientific fields. So Abdul Rahman I, after getting Al-Andalus together, he proclaims himself as the Amir of the Al-Andalus, and is a time where the Umayyad Imara starts in Al-Andalus, which will be one of the periods, because Al-Andalus is divided in different times. You have the time of the Umayyads, we have the time of the Muluk al-Tawa'if, then the time when the Murabitun come down, then the time of the Muwahidun, again the Muluk al-Tawa'if, then lastly the Nasrid kingdom of Gharnata, and the fall of Al-Andalus. Inshallah we will talk sorry about that, inshallah. So Abdul Rahman, the first, he has his Khalifas from one of the most famous one is Abdul Rahman III. Abdul Rahman III at his time was probably one of the best times of Al-Andalus. Abdul Rahman III is the one who also built this city that is called Madinatul Zahra. Madinatul Zahra, which many writers write in the books that the ambassadors of different parts of Europe will come, and when they will see Madinatul Zahra, many of them will faint of the beauty of the city. It was a city made for the Khilafah and to rule Spain, Al-Andalus, and it was also a city of knowledge. Abdul Rahman III, he was giving a lot of the wealth, supporting the ulama, supporting the people who will try to look for knowledge, and making Cordoba as one of the most important cities in the world, if not the most important. It was between Cordoba and Baghdad. And Abdul Rahman also got a lot of books from the Greeks and other places translated, which later on will be the means of the rest of Europe knowing about the Greek civilization that was actually through the Muslims, and more things that it is too much. We would have like just one day talking about the time of Abdul Rahman. But to know like the city of Cordoba, it was the first city in the world to have street light. It was a city that had hundreds of public baths. We're talking a time where the people in the north of Europe didn't have a bath like as something normal, and it was looked at about something, even in some places, something negative. There was a lot of masajid, and the masajid itself, especially the masjid that we've seen before, Masjid Cordoba, was a great university where people will be teaching in each column, and a teacher will come, will ask, will show his knowledge. He will be tested, and if they see that he is worthy to teach in the masjid, they will give him authorization, and they will give him a column. He will have his own halqa. Here they will be durus about the Islamic knowledge, usul, tafsir, hadith, etc. And also from the mathematics, science, nature, and different things. From this place, many scientifics, many philosophers and doctors came out and made such great works. Inshallah, we'll talk at the end about a few of them that benefited humanity, and they still are benefiting them until today. One of the things, for example, is the numbers that we have today that we use, which people call them sometimes as English numbers, which are actually are Arabic numbers. That's because in the numbers in the Arab world were done in a different way. They have a kind of common base, but the ones that we use nowadays are the ones who came from Al-Andalus and were exported to the rest of Europe. After Abdul Rahman III, another great man who comes is Al-Mansur, who is the last, you could say, strong ruler for the Umayyad Empire. But he was actually not an Umayyad. What happened is that the son of the last Khalifa was very young, Hisham, and he was only 11 years old. So he took the power for the benefit of Muslims. He was a great soldier and commander. He fought 52 battles in his life and never lost one. No one has been recorded to do such a great thing. And he was the one who made the biggest extension in Masjid Cordoba. This is Masjid Cordoba that you can see. So Masjid Cordoba had different stages. This one is the one that was built by Abdul Rahman the first, the entrance. Then later on by Abdul Rahman II, then by Al-Hakam, which is the beautiful mihrab, a mihrab that everyone is amazed about and is speaking to the rest of the masjid itself. And later on, when Cordoba got to have 1 million of inhabitants and the Jami Masjid became small, he made the biggest extension, which was he doubled the size to that side, not towards the Qibla as it was done normally, because of the river, which is here, and he couldn't extend it anymore. But after Al-Mansur, he appoints his son, and that become a means of conflict between the Muslims, between the Umayyads and between this family, which were a Yemen family. And the period of Muluk al-Tawaif starts. So every single governor that will be around Spain in different cities like Barcelona, like Zaragoza, Valencia, Toledo, all these cities, Sevilla, they will claim independence. And this is when actually one of the worst times for Al-Andalus. These governors will claim themselves to be the kings, and they will start fighting each other. Suddenly, all Abd al-Rahman worked for, all that was worked for by the ulama, etc., to build that unity, to help Muslims and help non-Muslims to have such an environment, and all with the right intention, is to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and trying to do the best, following the commands of Allah and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Suddenly, everyone turned towards the dunya, and was that love for dunya which corrupted the hearts of these rulers and made them use Muslim men to fight each other and kill each other for just dunya purpose. So it was a time where the 32 different rulers at the same time of Al-Andalus. This was an opportunity for the Christians that were in the north and of the rest of Europe, which were waiting just for a small chance to attack and obtain that land. But they said that they had to reconquer this, as they say in the famous saying, they have the Reconquista. Something that it is important to talk about this Reconquista concept, as I was saying before, even though the rulers and the Muslims were the main people in Al-Andalus, but still were not the majority until much later on. And it was actually the local people who became Muslim. So there is no such a concept as Reconquista in reality, because the sons of the first people, they were never expelled by the Muslims. They lived in the same houses. They just accept the religion as Islam. From the time of Muluk al-Tawaif, one of the most important kings was Al-Mu'tamid ibn Abbad, who was the king of the Taifa of Ishbilia. The Taifa Ishbilia, which is nowadays the city of Seville, was so strong that it came all the way from Algarve, from Portugal, to Murcia. So he extended from the east to the west of Al-Andalus. But Al-Mu'tamid ibn Abbad, he wasn't very pious. Al-Mu'tamid ibn Abbad will fight, as we mentioned before, just for dunya purposes, etc. And it was a time that the Christians, Fernando came down and wanted to enter Seville. When he came to Seville, he saw that actually Muslims don't really have a big army, and was at that moment that Mu'tamid ibn Abbas seemed danger, and then he, for once, done something that will benefit the Muslims later on. The palace that you see in the picture is the ALcaraz, Real Alcázar de Sevilla, which is the royal palace that we still can visit today in Seville, which is the oldest still going royal palace in Europe, because still the Spanish royal family are using. And its history, subhanAllah, is ajib, because first of all it was built by the Muslim kings and the Muslim rulers. Later on, when the Christians take over and destroy what they found, they make this these palaces look like as the rest of Europe had, but one of the kings, which is his name was Peter, he suddenly went to different Muslim palaces and said, I don't want a Christian palace, I want a Muslim palace. So he takes people from Sevilla, from Toledo, from Granada, and he starts building the palace that, for example, what we see in here is a Muslim work by Muslim workers, but it was commanded by a Christian king who wanted to have a palace like the Muslims. So still, even though the conqueror still was that thing that even the people who are ruling, they're still looking upon the Muslims and want to be like them. So when Al-Mu'tamid ibn Abbad sees that the biggest Taif, kingdom of the Taifas is in danger, which is Ishbilia, he finally, by the advice of the ulama, decides to call the Murabitun. The Murabitun were a group that came from Morocco, they found the city of Marrakesh. It was founded by them. It was a movement who was just founded and was very strong in their iman, very strong in their beliefs. They were very good soldiers also. And the leader's name was Yusuf ibn Tashfin, a personality that everyone should read about his life. This is one of the picture is one of the dinars of his time, of Yusuf ibn Tashfin. So Yusuf ibn Tashfin, at the age of 80 years old, when they come and ask, Al-Mu'tamid ibn Abbas asks for help, he himself goes to fight. He's 80 years old, as sees danger for the Muslims and he wants to contribute himself. They come, they push the Christians, and by they tell the rulers that you have to sort yourself out, and you have to start getting together, leave these luxury lives that you have, leave all this ma'asi, all these things that they're taking you away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because when we do things that are not in accordance with the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we become weak. Allah's help doesn't come down. Doesn't matter how much knowledge, doesn't matter how much scientific things we have, how many inventions we do. The Sahaba radiallahu anhu, if you look at them, they were camel shepherds, they were people who didn't have much things about dunya. They took down the Persian Empire, took down the Roman Empire, and it was because of the strength of their faith and because of the sincerity in their hearts that they didn't want the dunya they had in their hands. They wanted to be the means of salvation for those people who lived on those lands. So Yusuf ibn Tashfin, after going and coming back for 3 times to Al-Andalus, he decides that the time is over for these kings and we have to take the rule from them. So Al-Mu'tamid ibn Abbad himself, who was at the time a king, and when he hears about this, wants to actually go against the Murabitun. They take him and they send him to Marrakesh, where his tomb is right now in one of the areas, which also leads to a story about this movement of Andalusians that we have today, from even non-Muslims, which are trying to bring back the history of Al-Andalus and make people conscious about how that this history is part of Spain's history, because it is sad to say that a majority of the history about Spain, they don't include this story and the history of Al-Andalus because its connection to Islam. So the Murabitun ruled in Al-Andalus for 150 years, but another movement rise up in Morocco, which is called Al-Muwahidun. Al-Muwahidun at the beginning were a movement which was not according to the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Its leader Ahmed ibn Tumat claimed to be the Mahdi and did many wrong things. But later on, the people who came after, they went back to the right Islam, alhamdulillah. And they came to Al-Andalus, after came to Al-Andalus, and they chose Seville as the Darul Khilafah, which means that Seville will become Darul Khilafah of an empire that was mostly of African nations and had over 17 countries under its rule. And what we see there is the Jami' Masjid of Ishbiliya, a masjid that had the tallest minaret in the world. And it was so tall that for the muaddin, because it's about 36 floors, and the muaddin will, when he go up to give adhan, he will run out of breath. So he's making ramps so the muaddin could go up with a horse. He will go up to with a horse and give the adhan. This masjid was built by the Muwahidun. Is right next to the ALqasr that we seen before of the Al-Mu'tamid ibn Abbad, and was the second biggest masjid in Al-Andalus. Right now is a cathedral as the rest of the big masjid in Spain, which Christians took, and in many places there were agreements that actually they will not touch the masajid, but at the end they became churches. So majority of the masjid besides the Minara was put down, and they built the biggest Gothic church in the world. So what is left only is the Minara. This top part where you see the bells was later on, and the part where the Muslims used to make wudu, that is still remaining. The Muwahidun ruled for another approximately 150 years. Another movement rises from in Morocco, which makes the Muwahidun go back, and then again we have the Moroccan Tawaif, and another time the governors claiming that this is our kingdom and fighting each other. This is the time when the majority of Al-Andalus, what was left, it will be lost in the cities of Valencia, Toledo, cities of Seville, and it will be a time for the Nasrid kingdom of Banu al-Ahmar, the people who ruled the city of Granada, which, because all of the Muslims, all the ulama, all the artists, all different people who had knowledge, scientists, came down to Granada, was actually a very good time for Granada itself. But looking at the ruling family, it was not very good, and it was actually that after all of Al-Andalus was fallen, Granada stayed for 200 more years, but that had a very expensive price, and that was they had to help the Christians to take down the other cities. For as example, for Seville, Seville was taken down by the help of the Banu al-Ahmar with the Christians, and Muslims lost the city, which took them 18 months to take. The Muslims will stay for 18 months, waiting until it starved because they couldn't get inside the city, and finally they had to give up. So in Granada we have one of the most important places of Muslim architecture in the world, which is Qasr Alhambra, which was chosen by the first leader of Al-Ahmar as a place of strategy in a mountain, which was not possible to get an army over there. And he started building this small city inside, where the army will live, where the people who will work for the royal family will live, and outside in this Alhambra will be the city of Granada. Granada, which later on becomes also the name for the name of Granada, which is pomegranates, because there were a lot of pomegranates there, as the pomegranates, rice, sugar, many things that Muslims got to the rest of Europe through Al-Andalus. And that's why even in English, because in Spanish we have, let's say, approximately about 25% of the vocabulary that has some relations to the Arabic language, but these words are also in English from the Arabic language, like for words like rice, like cotton, like saffron, all these words. And Granada, that was one of the reasons why the pomegranate was called Granada, for the city of Granada. The Alhambra Palace is subhanAllah, one of the most amazing places that you could see for the architects, how it was built. And there is few things, like for example, in the tiles of Granada, that the scientists have found out there is a knowledge in the mathematics, which is to do with the crystals and how can you reproduce the same image and make it go to the infinite. So they found these only 17 possible ways to do that. And when they looked at the tiles of Granada, they found that all 17 ways they were already discovered by the Andalusian artists, subhanAllah. There is many different things. This fountain that you see here, the fountain of lions, which is very famous, they say that each lion will drop water at a different time, so it was like an hour and a clock. And then when they opened it to try to see how it works, they broke it and they never found how it was done. Also to Castle Alhambra, which is built on top of a mountain, is amazing how they brought the water up to a mountain on those days by making a system of acequias go all the way from up that had about 700 kilometers, and which the Muslims were very famous and gave a lot of knowledge about agriculture and these things that are left in Al-Andalus. But the time came when the leaders themselves, you will see a father fighting against his own son, brothers fighting each other just for the rule, and the power of the Alhambra will decrease. And finally, in 1492, Abu Abdullah will give the keys of the city, even though the people didn't want to surrender. People wanted to fight and protect the land, but he gave the city, the keys of the city, and it was the loss of the Muslim ruling in Al-Andalus. It is not the end of the story of the Muslims in Al-Andalus. It is a very hard time now, because now time of Inquisition starts, when Muslims are forced either to convert or to leave later, either convert or be killed, etc. And but until about 150 years later, and we're talking about in the 1600s, there was a rebellion by the Moors, what they call the Moros in Spanish, that they were already Christian, because the fathers had accepted Christianity, not in the house by the tongues, but kept praying in the houses, but that would be sufficient for them, but it will be the means of the children losing their iman, because they will take their children, they will take them to the churches, teach them the Christian religion. So we're talking about people who were Christian, proper Christian, these Moors, but they kept the language and they kept the clothes. And this was something that kept annoying the Christian people, especially the ones in the Inquisition. And they said, these are not becoming real Christians because they keep in the tradition. And these things, something that we should ponder about this identity. Many times we try to be accepted by the others and losing our identity, which will not make others accept us. We should be proud of our identity as Muslims, and this identity itself will protect us, protect our iman. So these people who were Christians, but they spoke Arabic and they were like Arabs, and when they felt in danger that they actually wanted to take everything out from them, they rebelled and they accepted Islam again. So that means that we have to go back to what our fathers used to be like. So it became the reason for the Islam becoming Muslims, At the end, they had to fight in 3 years. Everything was finished, but at least Alhamdulillah died in a state of Iman, and that was the end of the history of Muslims in Spain. By the kingdoms of Castilla, Leon, getting together and making what is the actual now Spain. I told you that I was going to speak a little bit about what actually the Muslims left for the humanity. Some works that even nowadays Spanish people don't know that this happened in the land because of this covering up of the history of Islam by some people with different interests. So one of the great works that happened in Al-Andalus, and from that masjid that we see in the masjid of Cordoba, was the work of Al-Idrissi, who made the first world map. You can see in the picture, he traveled all these places and made the first world map. He also, even though the Americas are not in the map, in his book wrote about the Americas, about people going there. He described how were the people who lived there, how was the land, and this was the reason that immediately after the fall of Granada, Columbus went to Americas. It was because he already had all the knowledge that the Muslims left there. And also, as you see, the world is round. It was something that at that time it was not in the rest of Europe was believed that it was something that it was plain. Muslims in Al-Andalus already knew that the world was round. So this is the work of Al-Idrissi. You have the work of Abbas ibn Firnas, a very big scientist, who is the first man to be recorded to fly. And he jumped from the Menara of the Masjid of Cordoba, this Menara that you can see here. First time he jumped with like a kind of parachute, and the next time he jumped with wings, actual wings, and he flew for a time. But when he had to land, then he fell very badly, and he broke both of his legs. Then he found out that he forgot to make a tail, which is very important for flying. So Abbas ibn Firnas, it was an amazing personality who had also in his house built like a small resemblance of the universe with planets that will move in their orbits and other amazing things. We have people also like Europeans call him AlCaraz. The people say that he's the most important Muslim doctor in the history of Islam, and he designed such utensils that are still used today by the surgeons in the hospitals. At that time, he was one of the first to do like surgeries, and they developed a scientific method and how to corroborate things, etc. We also have Ibn Rushd, very famous philosopher, very famous also in astronomy, and many of these people you will find stars in the name. For example, Abbas ibn Firnas, there is a crater in the moon which has his name. Many of the stars, and the sad thing is actually many of us know about names of Greek civilization, like to quote about people like Plato, etc., Socrates, but we are very ignorant of our history and what we have given to humanity, which is actually taking all that knowledge that was before and making it better, because using it with the light of Islam, the light of Iman. These people were not just scientists in these fields, but were also very knowledgeable in the Islamic studies, and where people were pious and looked at things with the nur of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ibn al-Baytar, very famous for his books on pharmacology and getting different, about, in his book, about 1,400 different plants, talking about them, each one will benefit, how it benefits, etc. And many other different scientists that gave the humanity much of what we are using today. And many works that they were lost also. There is the famous story of what happened in Bab al-Ramla in Gharnata, right? That one of the biggest squares in Gharnata, what they done after the conquer, they took all the books in Arabic and burnt them in the square as something that we have won against these people, but it was actually an act of ignorance. And also they say in Sevilla, when they took the city, that the river became black because of the ink of the books. But it is something that the past, as we said, that we should learn from, and we shouldn't always just speak about it as something that we had in the past, but this should inspire us to become a great ummah again, to become people that the rest of the world will look upon us. That, for example, we have example that doctors nowadays, we see them wearing this white cloth that they wear in the hospital. This actually comes from AlAndalusia, because the people from different places of Europe will go to AlAndalusia to study. We have even letters by the English kings asking Abdul Rahman III, can we send our daughter to your place, and so they can study in your universities. So these people, when they will go back to their countries, they will go back proud of where they came from Al-Andalus, and to show that they will wear this kameez like they wear the Arabs used to wear. Some of them they even wear the turban, and this tradition was kept until today. And that's why in all of the hospitals of the world, you see the doctors wearing this white cloth. So it is up to us. Alhamdulillah, we have the potential as an ummah, but we just have to learn how to focus. We have to help each other, forget these small things that may be difference between ourselves, and focus on what unites all of us. The Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our aqidah, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and follow the footsteps of these people who are reason of us being proud as Muslims. So this is what we're trying to do now with Andalusia. We are trying to provide this knowledge after Muslims left this land, which has given so much to the humanity. So many books in Islamic science, like Ash-Shatibiya, very important, on the ilm of qira'at, books on fiqh, books on different things, that we want again to start again being Andalusians, writing more books and writing about Islam and reviving that Islamic knowledge. It is not anymore about the land, it's about the knowledge, it's about the environment that was there, it's about presenting Islam to humanity as we used to before. So for this, Alhamdulillah, Allah gave us the tawfiq. We established this Madrasah of AlAndalusia, and we slowly trying to make it happen, starting with protecting the iman of the Muslim community that is there. That many of them are in danger of losing the iman, because Muslims start coming in the late 80s and 90s, and with the fikr of dunya, and forgot about their children. And you find out youngsters 20 years old who don't consider themselves anymore Muslims, because they never had an Islamic education, never had something to make them feel proud about their legacy and the iman. So inshallah we will see a video of what AlAndalusia is doing for the campaign. Assalamu alaikum. Muslims around the world come to Spain to visit the great legacy that Muslims left here and go back with a feeling of sadness. But how many of them thought about reviving it? Well, now you have the chance to do something about it. After I finished my Islamic studies in the UK, I came back to my hometown, Sevilla, to try to revive the Islamic knowledge that once emerged from here. For that, we founded AlAndalusia Education. We initially started with 18 students in one location. Alhamdulillah, we now cater to over 200 students of all ages in 3 different locations. Not just simply teaching, but also making it a fun learning experience. We have also produced our own books in Spanish, organized our activities, provided support for new Muslims, and launched a social media platform to reach the Spanish-speaking Muslim community around the world. However, this is not enough. The Spanish Muslim community doesn't have a maktab system, and thousands of youngsters and children are in danger of losing their iman. Many of them don't even know how to say La ilaha illallah. We need to act fast, and we need your support to bring a change. Did you know that in the world, 400 million people speak Spanish as the first language? We want to reach to every single one of them and help them in the path towards Allah. For that to happen, we need to purchase a location for our madrasa so we have a stable place to work from, print our books, train teachers and da'is, and expand our team. This is still the beginning. Therefore, if you support us now, you will get the reward for everything that is to come, inshallah. All that they learn, practice, and share with others, you will reap the rewards. We are in the last days of Ramadan, and the rewards are multiplied. So we need you to click few buttons and make this happen with the will of Allah. Donate generously and visit our website at andalusia.org to start a regular donation. Even if it's €3 a month, it will make a difference. Please make a lot of dua for us, and don't forget to share this video. That's a free reward for you, and if you come to Spain, do visit us. Jazakumullahu khairan. This was the video that we made for fundraising campaign in Ramadan. Alhamdulillah, we got to fundraise about 5,000 euros, alhamdulillah. But still, there are a lot of projects that we want, inshallah, to complete. We will explain a little bit about, as I said, the situation of Spain is such that, alhamdulillah, now we have masjids, we have different things, but in the Islamic education we are lacking a lot. And you will find places where maybe some Quran memorization classes are going on, maybe a bit of Arabic, but this is not enough to protect the iman of the youngsters. It is very important that they learn Aqidah, learn the Sirah of the Prophet ﷺ, and these things which will make them proud, understand the religion in a way that they will be able to also become da'is in the future and protect the iman in such an environment which is Europe, and probably many of you have gone to Europe yourself. So most of the things were mentioned. I will just go about what we are providing. We are providing Islamic studies courses to children, youngsters, and adults, alhamdulillah. We now have 3 different branches, alhamdulillah, and produce our own Islamic books for Spanish people in Spanish, because we want to, as we said, we want them to become real, have this trust on their faith and be able to propagate it. Courses for new Muslims, da'wah activities. We have da'wah activities ourselves also with other organizations, like for example the AIRA in England. Lectures about Islam to non-Muslims, so we have try to do it once a month, call Muslims, speak about something that Islam has to present for them. and also for the young generation, try to make the madrasa environment not just with the burden of learning, also there is fun for them. So we try to provide also sports in an Islamic environment, keeping the Islamic morals and adab and akhlaq there. So our ongoing projects is, the first one is that we're trying to buy our own place, because still we don't have we haven't secured a place. And the place where we are now basically like is in rent, and they could take us out anytime. And alhamdulillah, we got to a good deal with the owner of the place. We're trying to buy it, inshallah, all together. It's about 120,000 euros, inshallah. We're also trying to open 2 more branches, alhamdulillah. Trying to, not just because we produce the books, but we need the fund to print them, and also prepare adults to become the future teachers. Because alhamdulillah, slowly people are seeing the results of our children and our youngsters, what they're learning and what are the fruits. And they're asking in other cities, but the problem is that we don't have people prepared. And Islamic education is something to take seriously when it's train people to be in the best possible manner. And for that also we are setting the grounds for, inshallah, the first ALcaraz course, preparing, is like divided in 3. First 2 years to prepare people to be Islamic teachers in madrasas, then 4 years, if they complete 4 years, to become an imam, inshallah, in masjid, and 6 years to specialize in some of the fields of Islamic sciences. Inshallah, our situation is not really good, because, as I told you, the Muslims are quite new in Spain. Also, they come from backgrounds which are not very good economically. The situation in Spain itself is not very good economically, and a problem that we have, the majority of the people come from places where the government takes care of the Islamic education. So they're kind of waiting for the governments, Muslim governments, to come and fund these projects, which will not happen. And they need to understand this, and that they have the responsibility to, in fact, for their own children, which is a manner on them. So inshallah, whoever can contribute, jazakumullahu khairan, at least do make a lot of dua for us, inshallah. Also share with other people, maybe interested, inshallah, in helping us. And again, please dua, inshallah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq, accepts our work, give us ikhlas, inshallah, and najah on this way. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Questions, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Sheikh is basically opening the floor to, if there is 1 or 2 questions, I think you can take, probably not too many. Correct, I mean, this is filtering, yeah. Anyone from the floor? Yes, brother. Welcome. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Dr. Kamarul. I'm from Shah Alam. My question is, how many Muslim population in Spain? And regarding the history, what happened when the Muslim kick off from the peninsula? Is there any help from the Osmania during that time? Sorry.
So regarding the first question about the population in Spain, alhamdulillah, we are about 2 million Muslims now in Spain. From these 2 million Muslims, about 48% was, as I counted, they are Spanish, meaning like they have Spanish nationality. And alhamdulillah, increasing slowly. For a country that has about 48 million people. Regarding the question about the Ottomans, as you know, they were just trying to conquer Constantinople, Istanbul, and they were busy on that mission. And the Ottomans did send boats when there was the expulsion, so the Muslims could take those boats and go to places like Al-Maghrib, Morocco, Algeria, Tunis. But as a military help, there was no such a. In the last rebellion that I mentioned, they stood at the defense of Turkish people, but it looked like they were just volunteers and they came to help the Muslims there.
Thank you, Sheikh. Is there anyone else who have a burning question? You cannot go back if you don't ask the question. Because you flew him all the way from Spain, probably you know, before going to Andalusia, you want to ask him personally? Okay, yeah, Sheikh Kutub.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh Barakallahu fiikum, Muhammad Qutb. I'm originally from Damascus, Syria, and I'm studying here in Malaysia. I heard from someone, but I didn't get all the details, so maybe you can tell us, we can hear it from you, that there was talk about the Capitulaciones agreement, which was not implemented by Ferdinand and Isabella in 1492, that some Muslims are trying to perform some kind of legal or political action based on rights that were given to them by capitulations that was not respected by the monarchy. Is there anything like that?
Yes, there is a movement, as I mentioned, from people who deny the Muslims, but they somehow feel this importance of accepting all this history as part of the Spanish history's legacy. And many of them feel like they were treated badly, the Muslims, at that time, which actually happened because it was an agreement written, which was later on broken. But many say that this has no value nowadays. It's a very long time ago, and probably that will create other conflicts in other places of the world if the same thing was to happen. So, but there is a movement. There is a movement between Spanish people and the colonists Andalusias. They even had a political party and different things. But now it's quiet. It's not as before. But many of them became Muslim later because of the interest about the history of Al-Andalus, which will lead you to learn about Islam and the beauty of Islam, and then they will become Muslims.
Based on that, Sheikh, you're saying they're quiet, but so they're basically the antithesis of the Vox movement, right? I mean, they are like the complete opposite of the far-right wing. So is that a movement that Muslims in Spain feel can be supported because they are speaking that way, or not really?
It is something that actually we will not benefit as much of. So trying to move these kinds, it will get more grudges between people and revive something that was a cause of animosity between them. So what happened. We are there now, we are citizens of Spain also, and we just claim the same rights everyone has. Alhamdulillah, we have freedom, that we can teach our religion, etc. There's also some things that, inshallah, could be better, but many times the weakness is first from ourselves, from the Muslims, that we're not taking things seriously.
Maybe one last one, possible. Check. If there is anyone that you really have to ask, you come all the way from anywhere that you want to ask a question, you can. Yeah, please, one from the lady, from the sister.
Assalamualaikum, Sheikh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Okay, they hear me. In 2006, I was in Madrid, and I know at that time Islamic Development Bank, together with the Saudi government, sponsored the Islamic Center in Madrid. So The Saudi is still sponsoring any Islamic schools or anywhere in Spain?
As Islamic schools and these kind of things normally do not support this kind of causes because it's a kind of a conflict of interest because it's a government and another government from outside, etc. So they will support causes like masjids and other things, but like types of madrasah and that, it hasn't happened. And we also, because it involves politics, so in a way we try to avoid to make things go forward. Jazakumullah khairan again for coming, and please do make a lot of dua for us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So we give a round of applause to Sheikh Muhammad Idrissi. Thank you very much, Sheikh. Right, I just to do just a short recap of what he has presented just now. One is that I think Sheikh tried to highlight the golden age of Islam from the 8th to 15th centuries or 15th centuries. We are basically the torchbearers of civilization, and the biggest city in the world is basically in Andalusia, Spain. And basically during that time, the Western civilization were pretty much in the dark ages. So we are, the top city, and the top city of the 10th city in the world, the biggest city in the world is basically the Muslim cities. But now we have fall back, we are rise, fall, and hopefully we can rise again. This is a small project that Sheikh Muhammad Idrissi are doing in a small way, but I think organically by doing through education. I think try to set up all the madrasah by teaching teachers to teach pieces, books, proper syllabus for the kids. We try to do the correct way even during the Muslim conquer. I think basically the people of Spain are welcoming. We don't really put salt to them. It's only during Reconquista by the Isabella Ferdinand. So they really put really hard treatment to the Muslim, to the Jews, even to the Christian. I think Christian that did not really fall into how they interpret what Christian is. I think basically that is it for the night, and there is an envelope on every part of the table that's basically if you wanna play a part, try to help the revival of Andalusia. Because like she said, probably in Spain, economically they're probably not very good. They are surviving. There's only about 4% of them. So surely, inshallah, it's all they have from all you guys. They can put as ikhlas as possible. If you're not forcing, that probably we can make Islam great again. And for that, thank you very much. Thank you very much, and jazakallahu khairan kathiran. And also, thank you for coming here. For spending your time to listen this talk, and all the volunteers. Thank you very much for all the hard work. I know you have been done this for a couple of weeks from one. Yeah, and once again, thank you, Sheikh, for the talk. Thank you.
Jazakumullah khairan to the people who organize this and who provide the food and make this happen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala order the best of dunya and akhirah, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan.
Okay, give you guys a big round of applause. Thank you everyone. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And also just one last thing before you go out from this hall.